All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Lore Council. It is Cade here, today joined with Keith.
Hi.
And we, after a 2-month absence of going without talking about Legends content, we are back to talk about the kind of a duology of the, I guess you could say the Star Wars Zombies duology, starting with Red Harvest, and then jumping like 3,600 years into the future to Death Troopers. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Stick around and find out if they are any good. And jumping right into it is obviously Red Harvest. So this novel was released in December of 2010 and is set in the timeline at 3,645 BBY. And a quirky little thing that we were just talking about right before we recorded is that it is both preceded and followed by Old Republic novels that tie into the SWTOR RPG, but since this came out before the MMORPG, it is completely separate from it, which is very cool, and I'm sure they just retconned in later that all these events take place during that, and that probably the Sith that are in it are part of the shitty Sith Empire that exists in the SWTOR MMO.
Sure, why not? There's not really the book is very self-contained.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is definitely it's definitely what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a good thing. It's a good thing that it's self-contained and it's not really messing around with any other lore in the time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, Red Harvest. I just read it for the first time. I thought it was, I thought it was all right. Enjoyable, but not amazing or even thrilling.
Yeah,
certainly enjoyable.
I don't even know if I'd go with enjoyable. It's a pretty average read. I thought it's if you wanted me to pick the bare bones definition of a skippable Star Wars story, this would be it. It doesn't really.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think it's worth taking a look just because it's such a weird artifact in Star Wars. A Star Wars horror novel.
Yeah, but Death Troopers does it better.
Yeah, and we can talk about that when we get to Death Troopers. But first, let's describe what Red Harvest is about. Since I just read it, I'll just kind of go through it. It basically just takes place on this planet with a weird name that's hyphenated called Odysser Faustin. And it's about a Sith temple that's there, and there's this Sith guy, Darth Scabrous. He's trying to find out a way to become immortal and stuff.
As they want to do.
Right, and he's just being the worst academy master ever because he just completely ignores his students when he's not using them in his torturous experiments. As
the Sith do.
Yes, as they are apt to do. But certainly enjoyable. Where to start with this book? So the characters aren't great.
No,
they're not even good.
No, they're honestly the best way I could put it is that they're pretty generic, pretty two-dimensional horror movie characters. From a slasher a slasher flick, yeah.
Yeah, but in a Star Wars book of all things, and it doesn't work.
No, it
really doesn't. It makes you care because it makes you care even less about them because they just don't have any character. So when they die, and pretty much most of them die, you don't really care. The one who got the most character and backstory was this. I can't remember his name, but it was this one Sith apprentice guy, and he had gotten bullied by this one dude and almost killed by him, and then this other guy saved him, but at the same time took a embarrassing picture of him so he could blackmail him, and you get this little backstory on him, and then maybe a chapter later the dude is just dead. This book kills off characters so fast it's crazy.
Yeah, the mortality rate is turned way up. And again, like you mentioned, especially in comparison to other Star Wars books, even at the new Jedi Order's darkest and character kill offiest, like it can't compare to Red Harvest. Like the sheer amount of
rapid fire.
the sheer amount of like named character deaths is like off the charts. And you're right, like it doesn't like resound with the audience at all, because like these characters are introduced and then some of them, like a couple chapters later, it's like, oh, they're dead. Oh, great. Oh, zombie fodder.
Yeah,
It's like
I legitimately did not care about a single character in the book, really.
yeah, it reminds me, as we were talking about this, because I haven't read this novel for a couple of years, for good reason. And when we started talking about it and doing the review and everything, I kind of went back through and I skimmed through the plot summary on Wikipedia just to kind of like refresh myself a little bit. And as I was reading through it, it reminded me a lot of like the Walking Dead TV show at its absolute worst, where they're killing people off for like just pure shock value.
Right, yeah, doing the Walking Dead thing.
Yeah, kind of where they have the idea of, oh, it's a named character, so they'll care because it's not, Stormtrooper number 200. It's, whoever it is in this. Because, again, like, besides the HK droid that ends up showing up, like, everyone's pretty forgettable.
Yeah, and then again, the HK droid practically has no personality. Like, he gets a few lines. He's really cool. It's fun, but...
Yeah. And
the Whippet, I guess, sort of.
Yeah, the bounty hunter. Really. Yeah, but just think, if he wasn't a Whippet, would you care?
No.
Yeah, if he wasn't a K'Kruuk. I think that, like, honestly, like, the most compelling character in this novel is Scabrous, just because his immortality plan is so, like, out there.
You like it. I do like his little plan. It's kind of iffy, like it just completely goes off the rails because he has like a student like in a cage, and he's just injected them with the special formula with this like flower that's supposed to do something or whatever, I don't know. But injects him, student goes crazy, and then he just like opens the cage and he's like, "Come to me, my pet," or whatever. And the zombie immediately responds by biting his face.
Yeah. It's I don't know, he's a interesting like mad scientist character, and they definitely could have done a lot more with him than they did.
Yeah, the novel kind of just jumps around a lot. It doesn't really focus on any one character too long, and it's definitely to the detriment of it because you don't really get that much time. You're kind of just like, oh, we're checking on this person for a little bit, that person. There was this kind of one interesting character I thought was cool. Was this like librarian who was like a living tree person or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he like lived inside, like he was like part of the structure of the library or whatever. I think he's like the same species as that tree guy from
Ood Banar.
Yeah, he's probably from the Exar Kun comics or Tales of the Jedi. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was kind of interesting. I just like the idea of him. I guess he was like the guardian of the library for like 1,000 years or something.
Yeah.
Oh damn. It was I don't know. Some of the stuff didn't make sense. Like, okay, like why is this guy who's like a Sith or whatever? He's just been in this library for 1,000 years. I didn't find like the Academy to be, I don't know, that convincing. It just seemed kind of weird, Yeah,
like, it felt. And again, like even the Academy, like you don't really get like a lot of like super good like descriptors of it either.
He didn't do a good job of describe. He kind of just did a vague description, and then pretty much for like the rest of the book, you're kind of just wondering about like the scale of this place because it seems like at first it seemed you might think it's kind of small, but it's actually really big.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't explain like any good author could just like just give a decent explanation of the layout of some place. Oh, there's like a giant library over here, the center tower, of course. I just felt, I don't know, a lot like he kind of tried doing this thing with like the central tower of this like academy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like every time they would like go outside or they're trying to like escape or whatever, it would seem like they were closer to the tower or something like that, because it's like a Sith maze or whatever. It's like Sith architecture, like kind of disorients people. It didn't really give me that like psychological kind of like horror or thrill,
Yeah, especially like you said, like when we can't you can't really like see, and like we can't see it. It's like if it was a comic book, I feel like that would have been like a lot more like convincing, like, oh, the central tower, because then you can actually see it and you know like the scale of it, how far away they are. But in a novel, like, it makes it a lot more difficult when all you get is towers closer, towers closer, towers closer kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the best time you kind of got the scale of it was when he said that like you could land like a small craft on top of the dome or whatever, or not the dome, the top of the tower.
Yeah, well, even then though, like small craft in relation to Star Wars, like that's pretty vague. Like, does he mean like
Later on,
small?
like a ship lands on there, but yeah, the ship could be any size.
Yeah, like, you know, is the small craft, is it like a starfighter? Is it like a freighter, like the Millennium Falcon?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was my thing with that. But yeah, I mean, overall, like
the Academy is. I didn't get the Shining reference. In that, if it was the Shining, there would have been much more psychological horror. You know.
Yeah, well, in, you know, just for what he's saying, apparently, like, a lot of this stuff, when Joe Schreiber wrote this, by the way, I forgot to say that earlier. When he was writing this, apparently, like, he had The Shining in mind, and as I was going through and just like looking some stuff on Wikipedia just for some extra stuff to talk about, apparently, like, Odacer Faustin, like the snowy landscape was meant to be a reference to The Shining, and also Hoth, even though Hoth isn't very scary.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe he was thinking about the Wampa, you know,
or the fact that there are tauntauns.
Oh shit! I totally forgot about the freaking zombie tauntauns.
Yeah, because the Whippet bounty hunter gets infected.
Wow.
By tauntaun. Isn't it like tauntaun spit?
Yeah, because they spit and then start spitting zombie blood.
Yeah.
And they had like freaking zombies like packing up inside their like rib cages or whatever, and like using them as like hidden transport or whatever. I was like, what the hell? That was a little weird. That was a funny little. That was a fun part. Little kind of getting a little, you know, a little ridiculous there.
Yeah.
I don't know. What did you think of the zombie tauntauns?
I thought
not exactly scary.
No, it's
tauntauns are pretty goofy looking.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're goofy looking, but I think like the tauntauns being used in like that way as like a transport, I think I think that is a pretty cool idea. Just because obviously, like, you know, like obviously in the movies we see that tauntauns are used for like transportation, so it's kind of cool that even in death, they're still pack animals.
Yeah, I guess that's I didn't see it that way. But
yeah, even in death, they kind of like serve the purpose that they always have.
Seems like something you'd see in like a Star Wars zombie video game, you know, zombie tauntauns with more zombies inside.
Yeah.
But what else was there? The book did not do a good job of like like building up the tension, you know, before the zombies started showing up. Like literally in one scene, like they're gathering the whole, you know, all the students outside, and it's like a couple hundred of them, and then they're informing them of like what's happening, about something's happening, there's an attack or whatever, right? And then maybe a few pages later, you know, like it immediately switches to another character, and then maybe a few pages later, the entire academy has been overrun. You know.
Yeah, because that's one thing that we'll get to when we talk about Death Troopers. But Death Troopers did a way better job of like building up the suspense to the actual zombies.
Like 100 times better.
Yeah. Well, and also just like a tiny little thing that I don't like about this is the zombie like infection, whatever. It's just referred to as the sickness, which I think is just far, far too generic.
Oh yeah, and it's. But it's like the sickness is also like it's kind of like a force thing, or like a you know, like a knockoff version of the force, like an or I don't know, some kind of. It's kind of described as being kind of like the force, but but like the zombie force or whatever. Kind of weird. It's basically like the zombie infection version of the force or whatever. It's kind of like sentient. Oh, okay. Let's talk about Plant Lady and her magical talking plant.
Yeah, the black orchid.
Yeah. So pretty much, I guess the main protagonist of the book is this Jedi who's like a special Jedi who specializes in talking to plants with the Force and like growing them and just helping them with the Force, I guess.
Yeah,
Which is interesting.
has I can't speak. Hestizo Trace.
Oh yeah, it's Zoe for short.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think
that was
the thing that I like with that is the fact that she's not like a Jedi Knight. Like she's part of the agricultural corps.
Yeah, I guess that's Yeah, that's interesting because she's not like a standard Jedi. She's like the support Jedi, I guess.
Well, yeah, like she's literally just part of like a different part of the Jedi Order, which I think I liked that she wasn't like a Jedi. That's one thing I will say about the book. Like, it's cool that she's part of the agricultural corps because you never see them in anything else. Like, they're referenced here and there, but they're never like in any stories.
Yeah. I did like the plant. I like the character of the plant. But it didn't really have much of a character. But the talking and how it could talk to the Force, I thought that was interesting. And it only stays Force sensitive and like sentient as long as it has like a Jedi to support it.
Yep.
Like if she leaves it or whatever, it would just die, kind of die in the Force and just turn into like a regular
just
plant.
a plant. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super weird, but okay. But yeah, and so then this Whippet shows up to kidnap her and for just the plant, and then she tells him that the plant needs her to survive. And so like she gets so the Whippet was hired by Scabbers to get the flower to make the zombie formula.
Yep. Which he thinks obviously is going to give him the eternal life, which we had mentioned, and all downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah, he has this whole plan. It's like this a sacrifice thing. There's a cool part with like an ancient sword. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was another thing where because Scabbers is he has like Zoe. We'll just say Zoe, it's easier. Like he's like got her like strapped down to an altar, ready to do like an Indiana Jones like tear out her heart to become immortal, just like the frickin' Kali Ma.
Yeah.
But with the sword, and that was an interesting part. Like seeing that kind of stuff put into Star Wars, I thought was a little bit cool. But it felt really
like more Sith stuff,
more Sithy, and a little more. I don't know. It just felt kind of disconnected from the rest of it. I guess like it doesn't feel like part of like the trying to survive like the zombies. It feels more like
the book is very scattered. There's not really
exactly
a central through line of the plot. Just things kind of just happen. There's characters just running around. Like you have no idea what this like Scabbers guy's plan is. Pretty much throughout the whole thing, he's just kind of running around. And at the end, you're like, oh, okay. But yeah. It's also pretty short, so it has a bunch of characters. It goes around a lot, and then it's kind of short because I read the hardcover version, and I guess it was only maybe because the pages were bigger. It was only like 220 pages or so.
Yeah, it's definitely like a shorter novel.
I mean, I don't know if Death Troopers is much longer, but
no, they're about the same lengthwise. But reading Death Troopers goes a lot by faster than reading Red Harvest, I think, because Red Harvest was kind of like a bit of a slog, because then also you have the Whippet. He's the story I think that they should have been like following, because he's doing like the cool zombie horror stuff where like he's trying to survive and he's got to fight zombies, and they're trying to get to a ship.
Yeah, the story basically turns into a free-for-all once the zombies show up, pretty much.
Yeah, and I don't know, it like you said, it's a little bit disconjointed. And then there's also like kind of a weird part where Zoe's brother like shows up.
Yeah, and
like
and he's
out of the
around.
blue.
Yeah.
And duels Scabrous, but then Scabrous beats him, and then Zoe ends up basically killing Scabrous by convincing the plant to like beat him up, and then like now that he's like weakened or whatever, he turns completely into like a zombie, and then Hestizo kills him.
Yeah, the stuff with the plant gets like just completely shredded and frapped into the frickin' zombie mix, and it's but it's somehow still alive in the Force. Which I guess makes sense if it was a force-sensitive plant. It would have a little plant force ghost, I guess. And there's a few parts where like Zoe like asks the plant to like grow inside the zombies and like I guess kill them by growing.
Yeah.
But then that doesn't really work.
Yeah, and then basically, I mean, from there we have everyone like escapes, and then they have to, like we had mentioned earlier, they have to kill the Whippet because he gets infected from Tauntaun Spit, and yeah, they shoot him out the wall.
Space.
Or they shoot him, yeah, they shoot him into space, along with, there was an apprentice from the Academy that also attacks Sestizo, and gets launched into space with the Whippet, and then she seals it off, and then basically just decides to go back to Coruscant and become a Jedi. Hestizo does.
Yeah, and she escapes with the only other survivor, which was just this random pilot or mechanic who worked at the Academy.
It was a stowaway that was on the ship, yeah. Yeah.
And there's one part where like so eventually once there's enough of the zombies, they get the Sith apprentices become zombies and they get their lightsabers, and they don't really do much with them. Like there's just one cool part where like they all light them up in like a dark hangar or whatever, and they're like threatening this chick or whatever and like making her do stuff. But then the lightsabers immediately come into play, and then the characters just immediately escape after that.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't really you got this like cool, like, because like on the cover you see this like Sith zombie holding a lightsaber, you know. It's like, what? Whoa, what's this? You know, the Sith zombie has a lightsaber. How's that work and stuff? But then you don't really get much Sith zombie lightsaber action, so that's kind of not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would give the book, if I just had to give it like a number rating, I would give it like a 6.8.
Oh Jesus, that's pretty high.
Well, I mean, it was, you know, it was enjoyable. I didn't hate reading it, but you know, I noticed these things while I was reading it.
Yeah, honestly, and like I said, I haven't read it for a couple of years, but after I finished reading that, it was pretty much my thing to like never really read it again. Like I probably should give it a second chance, but like, and I could just be biased, but I would probably say, probably like a solid like 5.2. Like it's not inoffensive, it's pretty average. You know, it doesn't really do anything amazing, especially with like the interesting idea that Death Troopers kind of started with, kind of like a horror novel in Star Wars. It didn't really, I don't know, like we had said earlier, it didn't really add like a lot of suspense. It didn't really add like a lot of good drama. You kind of have like a couple.
It should have been much more creepy and scarier than it was.
Yeah, like they're in a Sith temple.
It really wasted the atmosphere of this Sith temple and everything, you know?
Yep, and I think that would have been really cool, because a lot of times when you see Sith temples, they're lit by like sconces and torches and like fire and stuff, so it would have been cool for like that to like come into play, or I don't know, like I said, I think it should have followed the Whippet, because I think his like survival, get out of here on the ship story should have been like the main focus.
Or just, I don't know, just anything else. It's a better story than that, you know? A better story than just all the characters he's trying to... Like, Death Troopers does it, but it does it in a smarter way, you know?
Yeah, and that's...
did we talk about the HK droid?
We did, and how it didn't really have, like, a ton of extra... It didn't really add a lot.
It was awesome, and it did totally annihilate zombies.
Yeah, it's obviously as an HK droid, you know, once... Because they have to reprogram it, because originally it was just programmed as a protocol droid.
Yeah.
And they have to modify it to fight the zombies, and it does work. Obviously,
he basically teams up with the Whippet, because he's like, you know, oh, you saved me, and because he hated working for the Sith or whatever. So like, okay, cool.
Ironic, as Darth Revan created the HK-47, like the most iconic HK droid. So, pretty weird. But no. All in all, yeah, like I said, like it's nothing amazing. It's nothing overly terrible, but like it's a skip for me, honestly. Like if someone asked if I recommended it, I would say no, skip it. Unless you're like a diehard like completionist, and you know, if you like Death Troopers, you'll like this a little bit less.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then speaking of Death Troopers, that allows us to perfectly transition over to the 2009 novel Death Troopers. This one came out in October 2009, again written by Joe Schreiber. And this one, like I had mentioned earlier, takes place in 1 BBY, so a year before the Battle of Yavin. And this is the original. So chronologically, yes, Red Harvest takes place first, but release date wise, this is the one that came out first. And it has
We should mention, though, that there's absolutely no connection between Red Harvest and Death Troopers besides the fact that the zombies are, like, similar in the way they act and stuff.
Yeah, like, they're both zombie stories, and I think in, like, source books later on, they kind of add in that, like, Blackwing was kind of inspired by Scabrous' zombie thing.
More of a spiritual successor. Huh?
Yeah. But no, so yeah, it kind of, and it has that very iconic, dumb cover of, like, the severed stormtrooper head hanging from a meat hook.
Yeah, but got people's attention, It was
It did.
thing.
I never. Okay. It doesn't make sense though, because that's not in the book.
Yeah, but yeah.
I mean, see, what I think they should have done, and I was thinking of this earlier, is I think it might have been a fan-made thing, or it could have been an actual trailer, but, like, there's a bridge of a Star Destroyer, and they end up, it's like the camera is zooming in on, like, the big window at the front of the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and it's like zooming in, and it's just like the stormtrooper standing there, and then
what are you talking about?
It's a fan-made trailer. It's on YouTube. It's the first time for Death Troopers. Yeah, it's the first time. I've never seen it. Yeah, I had ever heard of it, and it's like this zoom in. It's all dark and, like, gloomy and really creepy, and then, like, the stormtrooper turns around, or the camera pans around, and, like, its face is all, like, bloody, like, half of, like, the helmet's gone, and, like, it's all, like, bloody and zombified. I think that would have been cool as, like, the cover. Like, have the front cover be, like, the stormtrooper's back. And then on the flip side, it's got, like,
I wanted to keep it a little bit tame, I
don't know if that's I don't know if that's tame. It's a severed stormtrooper head.
Yeah, but it's not showing, like, the actual. It's showing a little bit of blood in there, but I just want to kind of tie back into Red Harvest a little bit, I thought Red Harvest was part of the reason why I enjoyed Red Harvest was because of the horror and it was very violent. It was very graphically violent, and I was just kind of appreciating it, like the novelty of a Star Wars horror novel, because that's probably not going to happen under Disney for ever.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's just a really cool thing, I guess. But yeah, where do we start with the Death Troopers?
Well, it starts off with Trig and Kale Longo. They're brothers. Kale is the elder, and they're on board a prison barge, the Purge, which I think is kind of a goofy name for a prison barge.
That was fine. Imperial ships and stuff are always named something edgy or, whatever.
Yeah, that's true, but they could have came up with something, because it doesn't have the only thing. It's fine if it's edgy. It's just it doesn't make sense as to why a prison barge is called the Purge.
Well, I guess when it moves them to another place, it's purging them out of its, shipness.
I guess.
But I like the way the book starts out. Kind of unique setting, prison. You're following, these kids around in a prison. It's just really cool. It's already, there's already tension just by the fact that it's a prison,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And from there, it just ratchets it up,
Yeah.
I think eventually they come across a derelict Star Destroyer.
Yep.
And so they stop everything, and they I guess the prison barge was moving through space, subspace or something. Like, it wasn't going in hyperspace, it seems, from the way it talks about it in the novel. Because the way the sound of the ship is described very well, and Joe Schreiber, he does a great job of just getting inside the characters' heads because when the ship stops, one of them, Trig or Kale, notices just how silent the ship is now that the engines have stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and the atmosphere of it, yeah, it's like it starts setting up like that tension and that unease like so much better than Red Harvest did. Like it takes
really
the
does.
time to like build and build up to it. Like
Yeah.
like Death or Red Harvest kind of like it blows that reveal like a little too early, and Death Troopers like it keeps you like wondering like. I could imagine like reading for this for the first time, and hopefully the back cover didn't spoil anything that would happen in the novel, because back covers tend to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, hopefully it didn't. I don't have my copy sitting near me,
It
so I can
spoils
check.
the fact that they come across the Star Destroyer and everything, and it spoils that, and then the fact that they go to the Star Destroyer, but they brought back something with them. Urgh.
Yeah. But no, so like they end up going on to the
The derelict.
the derelict Star Destroyer.
Yeah, because there's some Imperial protocol where they have to search every derelict or something like that.
Yep, and
Oh, I just wanted to say though, in that first part of the book where you're kind of just focusing on Trig and Kale in the prison, you get like you get just a lot of insight into their character, because they're doing like a deal, and it talks about they had their dad was in there with them, and then he died,
Yep.
and so they're trying to like do like some kind of shady deal, like their dad.
Well, they're
did, I guess,
selling
was kind of
weapons to prisoners.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, their old man was like a grifter or whatever, and so they're kind of doing that, and you just get great, just little character moments, but probably it's because there's only a handful of characters in Death Troopers that it focuses on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to give them character. Like there's this Imperial that they go back to. I think I don't know who he is, but he's the main Imperial guy you focus on, and you get lots of insight into his character because he has his little office. He doesn't like his superior's office. It just feels very cramped to him, and he has like all these little quirks and stuff.
Yeah, and like you said, like there's all these characters have like different things that unnerves them about like their settings. Like you just mentioned, are you thinking of Sartoris, the Imperial? The main Imperial Guard. He's like the guard captain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, yeah, because like you get that kind of thing where he mentions that like, oh my, I hate being in my supervisor's office because it's cramped and all that, and like you always get like these things where, you just get stuff like that, and where everyone is offset for like different reasons.
All these tensions and
that's
inside their head,
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. Is everything's already tense for them. So like obviously the two kids, like they're tense because their dad just got killed, and then like you said, one of them mentions how quiet it is, and then you get Sartoris, who's like it's just cramped and all this. So like they're already on edge, and it's building up the tension even more.
Yeah, and then when they get onto the Star Destroyer, they're like in the hangar bay, and like I'd never heard like an Imperial hangar bay described this way. It's just described as massive, and like all the guards or the Imperial guards that are on the ship to like explore it, they're all just amazed at how big this Star Destroyer's hangar is because they've just been on this shitty little prison barge for however long.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, it really puts the scale of like a Star Destroyer into perspective, because obviously like they're a 1 kilometer long like spaceship.
It manages to make a Star Destroyer, which is something you're very familiar with in Star Wars. It manages to make it creepy without even really doing much. It's not like the walls are splattered with blood or anything like that.
It's just empty and quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the same thing if you've ever been in like a hospital or like a school or anything like after hours, where it's like this big building and just the sheer silence is just unnerving. Like you're walking down the hallway and you hear like your steps echoing off the walls. Like like everyone's been in a situation where like you've been in like a similar situation. I mean, where like it's a creepy big abandoned area. And then they end up going on the Star Destroyer.
They do the old split up and search for clues.
Yep, and I think one of the best parts is when they end up in the medical bay, there's some lungs that are just breathing on their own.
Yes.
And that is just like, it's fucking creepy, because lungs don't do that.
Black fluid or whatever.
Yep, which obviously is gonna, come back later, I bet.
Right.
And then this is basically where, like, the first bit of, like, infection comes in, because, like, they all start, like, having, like, these bodily reactions. Like, I think people are, like,
first, I think someone gets injured on the ship or is like sick or something like that, and then they have to like evac him to the prison barge, and then everybody starts getting sick on the ship.
Well, because everyone in the medical bay, like, they're unable to escape, and like they realize like they're not alone. Like, they have like that moment of like, oh shit, and then we don't know what happens to them though, but they just can't like get away.
Oh, because I remember they do get away. They get back to the.
Well, Sartoris and his group do, but the guys who went to the medical bay didn't.
Oh yeah, those few guys, they get.
Yeah, because they get back to the purge, and then like that's when like they start like getting freaked out, like, showing like the signs of like infections and everything.
Yeah, and then you get this cool little, mini infection inside the ship where like everybody's catching it and stuff like that, and then pretty much eventually just everybody's dead, and then like it's just like Trig and Kale.
Yeah, because that's the only weird thing, and it's kind of like a Deus Ex Machina thing where like some people just are naturally like immune. It's revealed.
It's zombies, whatever, natural immunity.
Yeah, well, because Sartoris, he's immune, and then Trig and Kale are immune.
The same thing in Red Harvest.
Yeah,
right? Or you just have to like just not get bitten in that one, I think.
Yeah, because Red Harvest, you're right. They just can't get bitten, or I think exposed to like any bodily fluids, because obviously the Whippet was infected by Tauntaun spit.
But in this one, there's like, I guess there's just some kind of.
It's in the air.
It's in the air, yeah.
Yeah, and then so everyone's
that in itself is even more kind of scary,
unnerving,
right?
yeah. And because then it ends up where like everyone's dying, and then there's like a doctor character, Zahara Cody.
Yeah, I liked her a lot.
Yeah, she was probably, I would say, besides Trig, like the standout character.
She gets some good just character description right away. She's like
she's like the medical officer of the ship. Yep.
And she decided to take this shitty position to I don't know, help people or get out in the galaxy or something, or get away from her family.
Yeah, and then just the stuff that like oh,
and I like her medical droid.
Oh,
what was his name? It was like Waste, yeah.
Yep. And I was gonna say, like, one of like the like creepiest things that's like setting up all this stuff is when like they're in the cell, Trig and Kale are, and everyone just starts dying.
Yeah, because they're just watching everybody die in their cells across from them.
Yeah, because then they end up just they end up getting out, and then
pretty much after that, I think it's just like the characters just kind of just searching around and
Well, yeah, because they come across and I was gonna say, like, one of the parts that I remember is they come across like this Wookiee, and like his like entire family's dead.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh hey, come with us, and like they unlock the door, but like he just stays with them, and then
they leave, and then they just hear this like horrible screaming sound, probably coming from the Wookiee, and then like something that sounds like eating.
Yeah.
And that's their first hint at the zombies coming. You don't even get to see anything.
Yeah, you don't see it. Yeah, you just hear the noise like through the doors and everything, and it just works really good.
The imagination of the reader.
Yep. And then I think it cuts back to Sartoris, and he finds out that he's immune, and basically just picks up some blasters and starts blasting, because he notices that like these people that are affected, I think he kills like the warden.
Yeah,
of, like,
he
the
double
ship?
stuffed the face with two blasters.
Yep.
I remember the description in the book. It's been a few years, but I still remember the description. It's something like, the result was nothing short of spectacular.
Yeah.
Shooting him in the face, like point blank range with two blasters.
Yeah, and then he just like blows his head off, and then we find out that Zahara, she has an antivirus, which is, it seems like it came along a little quick, but it's Star Wars. You can buy that. They could come up with like a vaccine super quick.
Yeah, sure.
And
any kind of zombie thing or pandemic movie, we came up with a vaccine super fast.
Yeah, and then the only problem is she obviously has to give it to people who are still alive, and so she's able to do a bioscan of the ship, and there are 6 people alive. And then there's because it's Kale, his brother, her, Sartorius, and then as she's our 2 special guests, because she goes down to solitary, and she finds out that it's, oh my god, Dan Solo and Charles Bacca. No, just kidding. It's Han Solo and Chewbacca, and this is where I think this like brought down the book, having Han and Chewie in it.
Yeah, that's a little too,
Well, because the problem is once they show up, that Han and Chewie are 100% safe.
Yeah.
And it's too safe, like, because when it was just, you take them out and this would be like the perfect Star Wars horror novel. But then you have these, and obviously since it takes place before A New Hope, that they're gonna be alive.
Yeah.
And, they can't really do anything about it, but they end up giving Han the vaccine, and then Chewie, for some reason starts showing symptoms of like being infected, but then like Zahara ends up taking like a needle and just like sucks the infection out of Chewbacca basically.
Yeah, didn't he get like the vaccine, but then like something happened?
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, because like for some reason I think they say that Wookiees are like.
And then you get this little like horror sequence in his head where it's like zombie Wookiees or whatever, like singing the Life Day song from Star Wars Holiday Special.
So they do that, and then there's a really good scene where because it's mentioned that when Zahara's going down to solitary before she finds Han and Chewie, that she's like tripping over and like stumbling over all these bodies, but when they go to leave, all the bodies are gone.
Ooh.
Which I thought was just a really good thing. It reminded me of like to bring it to like another series, it reminded me of like 343 Guilty Spark, where like you're going through this Forerunner installation and there are these dead bodies when you walk by one time, but then when you go back through that same area later, they're gone. And that just has like the perfect effect on your mind of like, those are dead things aren't supposed to move, what the fuck, kind of thing. And it's just a really effective thing that you can basically only do with like zombies. So it works really well, and they end up leaving. Chewbacca obviously is fine. They just do like a little scare moment, which doesn't work because Chewbacca he's untouchable at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's still fun getting to see like Han Solo shoot at zombies and stuff, but
definitely
lowers down the horror. Sure.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one thing I'm going to probably end up harping on a lot. And then they end up cutting back to I think Trig and Kale, and we get this like their stuff as they're like going around, and then they get the feeling that whatever killed the Wookiee was following them. And I thought that was just, again, like, it's really effective. Like, before you even get zombies, like, you get all this just super creepy lead up, and it just works so much better than Red Harvest does.
Yeah, the lead up is like just it's half the fun of the horror,
Yeah, definitely. And so we end up getting it where Trig and Kale end up getting to the escape pods, and they don't know how to work it, because that's one thing I like is the main protagonists of this, Trig and Kale, they're not like super skilled like spacers or smugglers or anything. Like they can't even work an escape pod.
Yeah. They're just kids, and that definitely helps with that, like, you know, they have like a feeling of helplessness and, you know, being scared.
Yeah, especially since like they're obviously like their dad is dead, so and then they get Sartorius shows up, he tells them to leave, and then he launches off. So, typical Imperial guy.
Yep, but then doesn't he get like captured by like the tractor beam of the Star Destroyer or something?
Yeah, and I was gonna say like they eventually like loop around to it, and then they start running away from there because again they feel followed, and it works super well. And then when they reach the other escape pod, well, there's Han and Chewie, and then you know, Han and Chewie end up disarming the two boys. Zahara comes in and says that, you know, they all have to leave together, and that oh no, horror movie, the car's out of battery, aka the like escape pods are like they're sealed because of like the security systems.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember all the details, but they need to do something to get away.
Yeah, they have to go to the bridge to disable the like security system, and the only reason that that Sartorius was able to get away is because he had the codes for the escape pods. He got them from the Warden, so he was able to get out of there. So then,
and we get the ultimate twist where there's no escape.
Yeah, no escape unless you're Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Oh, sure. But yeah, they eventually all the characters find out that they can escape because the Star Destroyer is tractor beaming anything that tries to leave, you know, and then they even notice that there's like, you know, ships in the Star Destroyer hangar bay that, you know, they're not like standard or whatever, it's like captured ships or something like that.
Yeah, because there's like an X-Wing in it and all that.
So they eventually, you know, learn gonna have to shut this whole thing off.
Yep. And then we get some more good stuff where Han, Chewie, and Zahara go to the bridge to try and disable the security system. And then Kale and Trig stay at the escape pod. And then they hear something outside, or like moving inside the security pod. I can't remember. And then basically they just keep saying, you know, don't open the pod, don't open the pod. And then, you know, Kale comes back. Trig was there saying, don't open the pod. And then, you know, Trig is gone and the escape pod is open. And then they find, this is where it just got super like creeper for me. He ends up finding Trig in like a maintenance tunnel, and he's like all like scratched up and stuff. And then in the tunnel they can hear like stuff moving towards them, and then they run off to the bridge. And like that for me, again, it's perfect because I'm kind of claustrophobic, so like the idea of like being in a tunnel like that would just freak me the hell out. So again, works very well, and they're playing up to it. And still, we're all this way in, still no sighting of zombies. Just like the implied stuff where like bodies are missing, and then Trig is like scratched up and stuff, and you heard this stuff coming from inside of the escape pod. Like it works so well. And then they end up...
I always enjoyed it.
Yeah, and then obviously then they cut back to Zahara's point of view where they open the escape pod and they don't hear anything back. And then they look at the bridge computer because they're doing another bioscan, and now there's more life forms. And they're all headed for the bridge. And then Kale and Trig come through the door, and like he's like, "Oh my god, we got to run away." And then they get to the turbo lift, which brings them to the Star Destroyer. And then Trig, I think, wakes up and he sees his father. And then this is where we get our first zombie, and it's the two boys' father, and it works really well because obviously it's like even more emotionally scarring for them. Yeah, because Trig runs for him, Kale grabs him, throws him back on it, but then their dad bites Kale on the leg.
Oof. And
then we kind of have like a fade to black moment, and then they wake up, and Kale wakes up, and they're on the Star Destroyer, and then you get this really gross like description of like as soon as Kale tries to stand up, that like describes all like the blood that starts like leaking out of the wound. Yeah. But then, yeah, basically they have to where they need to get to the Star Destroyer to start the engines. And, yeah, Trig is, like, freaking out because he just saw his dead father bite his older brother, and then he has to go with Chewie. He doesn't even have time to process this, and he's like a 15-year-old kid. And then this is where we get it, the big reveal as they're walking along, like the ceiling just like collapses in and like just a horde of zombies like comes like just like running out of it.
Yeah, that part was great.
Yeah, it's like and I like it. Like it gives us like the one zombie of their dad, and then immediately it goes from that and the threat escalates 2,000 times, and it's like, okay, here's an entire zombie horde. And then they end up kind of just like running around in circles, more or less, because they're probably freaked the hell out. And then as they're sitting next, like, then we cut back to Zahar and Kale, and Kale is like, cut my leg off, because his entire leg is like getting like necrosis. And then it's moved up into his abdomen, and we have this gross scene where like Zahra cuts into his stomach to pull out like a big clump of infection, and it's like gross, like
black goo.
Non-anesthesia, like surgery. That's like, ugh, that just makes my skin crawl. And then, she ends up just, I don't remember how she gets rid of it, but she just gets rid of it and then cleans up Kale's wounds. And then Han, Chewie, and Trig end up like moving forward. And then we have this part where
like Sartorius like run away from like the horde or something, and like he runs into like a ship or something like that.
Well, I don't think we haven't gotten there yet, because there's that one part where Han and Chewie find the baby Wookiee. You don't remember that?
No.
No, they find like a baby Wookiee, and then they open up a door, and then there's like zombie Wookiees like eating human remains. And then they start running towards Han and Chewie, and then they have to start like blasting at them. And then the baby Wookiee is also a zombie, and it jumps onto Han. And they have this gross scene where it's like Chewbacca blew the zombie Wookiee's head open like a mango or something. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, and then they end up trying to fix the engines, and then we get kind of like a... Have you seen World War Z? The movie? Yeah. We get kind of a scene that reminded me of that, where the zombies are like coming up the turbo lift.
Oh, sure. They're like piling on top of each other.
Yeah, and then Kale and Zahara end up trying to like run away, and then it turns out they're equipped with blasters. What could be worse than zombies?
Oh, I know, zombies with blasters.
But yeah, no, the zombies, it's kind of like obviously it's like a Star Wars joke, because they're like Imperials, so they're shooting and they're not accurate. But they notice they are getting better. And so Kale gets shot in the face, and then she leaves him to go into the medical bay, and she gets attacked by a zombie and sticks a syringe in its head of like the antivirus, and it starts to act a little bit human again, and it like writes out Blackwing on the ground, and then it attacks her again, and then her droid shows back up and saves her life.
Yeah,
I think. Maybe not. I don't remember. I think it's a different droid that just happens to be like the same model. Actually. But anyways, they end up going to a console, and the droid tells her what's happening, and then the Sartorius, this is where he wakes up inside the escape pod, and then realizes that the tractor beam sucked him back into the hangar. And then he hears the blaster fire, jumps out, notices the zombie, jumps into an X-Wing and starts shooting, and then he crashes into a Lambda. He climbs in, and he's greeted by the like Imperial commander, who explains, he gives us like the exposition of like what happened. That like, this is a bioweapon that the...
2 or 3 of them or something?
I think there's 4 of them. 3 or 4 or something like that.
And,
yeah.
Really...
Yeah, and so basically, like, he explains how they've been stuck on the shuttle for, like, I think, like, a month or two, and they started off with 30 men, and I think they're down to, like, just those, like, remaining, like, you know, like, 3 or 4.
And they're like, to Sartorius, like, we'd love to have you for dinner.
Yeah, they do, like, kind of it's like a goofy little, like, almost, like, comedic, like, relief scene, but obviously it's a little bit creepy, and then,
What comedic relief scene? Where he tosses them all out, like they're made of nothing?
yeah.
I thought that was funny. Well, not funny, but in hindsight, it's funny. But
Yeah.
it's kind of messed up because he's just like throwing them out to get eaten by the zombies, you know?
Yeah, he throws them out, but then he also realizes that the zombies learned from him, and they're getting into, like, the ships. And he ends up, like, throwing them into, like, the like, zombie horde, and then the last guy's like, please don't kill me! And then Sartorius ends up just, like, asking if the shuttle's going to be able to fly, but then, obviously, you know, they figure out, you know, the tractor beam, you can't get away from it. So they have to go disable the tractor beam, and then he like, Sartorius is able to run through, and I'm pretty sure he gets bit, but obviously he's immune to it. And then we have the Zahara. She figures out that it's a bioweapon, and then she accesses the records, and then she goes to disable the tractor beam, and it's already been disabled by Sartorius, and then she's basically, like, boxed in by zombies at this point.
Sure, my memory's already kind of pretty fuzzy.
No? And then, yeah, Trig, he thought it was his brother and follows him into a room of dead bodies, and then, like, the zombies, like, end up, like, coming alive in that room, which is, like, why weren't they already alive? And then he ends up climbing into a ventilation duct, and then that just happens to lead right over where Han and Chewie had, like, went to, and then a zombie catches up to him, and then, oh no, he realizes it's his brother.
Oh yeah, I remember that part. And isn't he having to, like, climb over a bunch of bodies or something like that, like in the vents?
Yeah.
Or is that a different part?
No, maybe he didn't. I don't remember the specifics of that, but yeah,
I remember, like, the stormtrooper zombie, like, climbs out of this whole pile of bodies and, like, starts, you know, crawling after him through the vents, and then yeah, eventually he realizes it's his brother. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, and then yeah, he's, like, freaked out, and, like, when
that was a really, like, tense sequence with him getting, you know, chased through the vent, you know?
Yeah, and it works really, really, really well, because, again, like, it's, like, a little, like, ventilation vent, so, like, think, like, kind of like Die Hard is what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of, like, crawling around, and Kale is obviously, like, trying to...
breathing of the zombie.
Yeah, it worked very, very well. And then Kale is trying to bite Trig, and then they end up falling into the turbine room, and that's where Han and Chewie are. And then they end up started getting shot at by the zombies, and then they end up finding Sartorius, who is in a lifter, I think is what it was called.
Sure.
Yeah, and then they end up flying around. They get Han and Chewie, and they're overloaded, and so they're slowly getting brought down because of their weight. And then Sartorius has, like, his little redemption arc, and he's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself so you guys can get away. And then he ends up getting, like, just torn apart. They fly over to where they thought Zahara was, but they just assume she's dead. And then they end up getting to the Imperial shuttle, get inside, and then they get to the controls. They start flying away, but then the pilot, who was still in there, ends up like coming back to life in, like, this last little, like, in, like, a last little, like, kind of jump scare, I guess, where it turns out Zahara was never dead, and she kills the zombie, and then basically that she got saved when Sartorius, like, distracted all the zombies and everything, and then they fly off and go to a cantina, and Han and Chewie are like, oh, by the way, we have to go get the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, well, you're forgetting the ending sequence, which I thought was really cool. When they're escaping, they see like the zombie horde also leaving the ship in a bunch of different little ships, you know.
Oh yeah,
And then they all kind of just after at a certain point after they leave the ship, they all just kind of like careening out of control and like crashing into each other and stuff. And it's like revealed like, oh, like the zombie they could only be like a certain distance away from like their main source or
Yeah.
whatever that's on the Star Destroyer, so they're kind of like contained. So
that's right.
Pretty cool finale.
Yeah, it works really well, and then obviously that explains why there isn't like a Death Troopers 2 or something that like explores it more. But I think from what I've read, they did like an event with this in Star Wars Galaxies where you fight off, and I think Trig ends up reappearing, and it all happens on Dathomir. And then yeah, they end up Zara and Trig basically just end up settling down on whatever planet they end up on. I honestly don't remember.
They go to do something, whatever. Happy ending, yay.
Yeah, Zahara and Trig are probably just scarred for life, but they're like, yeah, we'll settle down here.
Han and Chewie are just like, yeah.
We have to go do main character stuff.
Let's go,
losers.
Let's go drop our spice shipment at the first sign of an Imperial Star Destroyer because we're terrified of zombies now.
Yeah, see, that's why they did it. It explains it all. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
He's like, no, not again, not more zombies.
Yeah. But no, overall, I thought this Death Troopers is it's an awesome read.
Oh yeah. Pretty damn good book.
Yeah, like it obviously. My biggest gripe with it is they have Han and Chewie be in it when they should not have. Like, if you want to have like a surprise, like 2 characters and like have 2 characters be in solitary confinement that nobody knew about, that's fine. But don't have it be Han and Chewie, because I don't think it ever explains why Han and Chewie are there. Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
Probably smuggling.
Smuggling, yeah. And then, but no, so like they're there, and like the whole like. The big most of the book is like build up, and it works super well. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like
it doesn't feel like, you know, like I'm waiting for the action to start. No, like it's all just good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it like I had mentioned it earlier, but to me it's very akin to the Halo Mission 343 Guilty Spark, where like half of it's build up, and then yeah, you get some like zombie shooting action, and you get some cool action scenes and some like, you know, gross imagery and everything of like the zombies dying and crawling all over each other just to like try and get at the main characters, and it all works really, really well.
Yeah. Red Harvest should have been a lot cooler.
Yeah, and it definitely could have been. I think they should have just like, instead of doing a prequel, should have done like a sequel where they have to deal with the fallout from this. But I don't know how they would have done that. I'm not a writer. I think that would have just been better if we got Death Troopers 2 Twice as Dead or something.
Maybe.
But no, I think
I liked the setting of it just being in the middle of space. I think that's just so much more creepy than the, you know, snowy ruins on a planet.
Yeah, and yeah, no, it definitely works a lot better that it's in like open space, because open space obviously is just this vast expanse of like darkness, and you know, it's creepy in its own right.
I like how like Dead Space 3 is kind of just less scary just because it's on this snowy planet, you know. And the first 2 games took place in the, you know, dead space in the middle of freaking space. Much creepier.
Yeah, and this definitely works as like a standalone. Obviously, you know, the only thing you need to know from the movies is who Han and Chewie are and what a Star Destroyer is.
Maybe not even that.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Yeah. But no, yeah. Just the basic Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, much. You could watch, like, literally all you would have to do is watch the OT, and bam, you're ready to read Red Harvest. Overall, I think like I said, it serves a lot better both as a horror story and as a Star Wars story.
Death Troopers, right?
Death Troopers, yeah. Because Death Troopers, I would heartily recommend, and I would say, for my rating, I would definitely give it like an 8.3 out of 10. I wish that there's some, like, a couple little things I think could have been improved. I think that Sartorius's little redemption comes kind of like out of nowhere, where he's like, I'll sacrifice myself for these people, even though like up until then he's been kind of like, you know, like a normal Imperial person. Like, he's kind of a dick, kind of uptight.
Yeah, they don't get too much bonding there.
Yeah, exactly. And then he decides to like give his life for him, which is kind of like whatever. Maybe it would have made more sense if Zahara would have like done that and like sacrificed herself, since she's like a doctor.
That would have had some emotional weight to it.
Yeah, because also with Sartorius, you don't spend a ton of time with him compared to the main characters.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time with Sahara and Hale and Trig.
Yeah, and then so I think that would have worked a lot better. But yeah, no, Trig, I think as like a protagonist, I think he works really well because obviously we've all been a 15-year-old in like a shitty situation. Maybe not zombie apocalypse shitty, but we've all been there.
Yeah.
And then his older brother and his father, within like a span of like days from each other, I think end up dying, and then obviously both come back. Han and Chewie, I think, were written fine. Like they talk and act like Han Solo and Chewbacca. Like when it's kind of like a funny little scene when Zahara's about to give him like the vaccine for the zombie virus. Han's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna take that." And then like he looks around like all the bodies and everything, and he's like, "Oh, maybe I'll take that."
Oh wait, did you say everybody on the ship died?
I'm in. But yeah, and then I think that having Zahara come back at like the end to save the day, I think that would have been like a cooler moment if Trig would have killed the last zombie on the ship, to kind of get that like arc of, he goes from being like this timid little kid to like, this maybe still like scared, but like, he's willing to act, because throughout most of it, he's basically relying on his older brother to like do everything for him. And he's kind of like the stereotypical like kid brother where like he more or less follows his brother's example. So I think it would have been cooler, have Zahara just like be dead on the ship. Like it's fine. Like she's never going to be in anything again. So, have Trig get that final shot in and kill the zombie instead of having like a, whoa, Zahara survived reveal at the end.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? Horror, man.
Yeah. Okay. Or better yet, just not have a zombie be on the Imperial ship and try and get that last kind of jump scare in.
Yeah. Well, nah. You got to go for the last jump scare. It's probably a callback to Alien with the escape pod. I'd give it like an 8.5.
Yeah, I think if they would have left Han and Chewie out, given us some more time with Sartorius, or just not have him have that sacrifice,
it certainly would have made it much creepier and
I would say it would be up to like nearly, probably like a 8.7, 8.8, somewhere up there, like upper echelons of 8. Like definitely still, obviously like on its own, like the way it is, it's still like a really good read. Like I would recommend it, but like it could, the tiny little tweaks, and it could have been like a great book.
Yeah, Han and Chewie being along is comforting, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like it gives you like that. It's kind of like they're kind of like the safety blanket. That, like, when you're watching the spooky movie, you can pull it up, a little bit. Like, oh, Han and Chewie are here, so everything's going to be okay.
I would say that they were, like, maybe put in there by, like, an executive or something like, what? It's horror and Star Wars. Put in the main characters.
Yeah, I would...
characters in there. Even though the EU doesn't really do that, it does the opposite of that, but...
Well, I think after a while, with stuff that was happening around like this time, like because 2009, I'm trying to think of what would have been coming out in Star Wars, but especially in like a lot of post Return of the Jedi stuff, they ended up doing it a little too much, where they would kind of rely on like those big three of like
in that area,
Han, Luke, and Leia. And you're right, it would have been a lot cooler if they just not would have had Han and Chewie in there. Like it would have been a lot creepier, because like obviously you can have Trig die, you can have Kale die, you can have Zahara die, you can have Sartorius die, but you're not going to have Han and Chewie die. And that's kind of the thing where
it's just kind of ridiculous, like, hey, hey Chewie, remember that time we were on a Star Destroyer? And
and that's the only thing, is that they never ever reference this.
Yeah, I mean, how would they, and why would they make such a big effort to do that? But no.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm looking around, and because around this time is when Fate of the Jedi started to be released, So with that, definitely by this point in time, post Return of the Jedi, any kind of not prequel or Old Republic, they definitely kind of started, making sure Han, Luke, and Leia were in all the novels. So putting Han and Chewie in there, I think is, kind of like I said, like it's kind of like the safety blanket. It's a safe choice. You can put them in, and everyone knows who Han and Leia or Han and Chewie are. But the funny thing is, they're not referenced on the cover. They're not referenced in anything like that.
Kind of put in there as like a little surprise.
Yeah. Well, I thought I don't know, and I kind of made the joke earlier. Oh, it was Dan Solo and Charlie Baca. I think it would have been funny if you would have had like, maybe when they open up that door, yeah, it's a human and a Wookiee, but it's just another human and a Wookiee.
Yeah.
Like just as like a little nod to Han and Chewie, and then they die off or something because they suck because they're not Han and Chewie.
I like that. Yeah, that would be great. Give them a different character dynamic, totally different characters altogether. Right?
Yeah, or have like a young like blonde kid with blue eyes and a woman with brown buns in her hair or something. Right. There are ways you could have fiddled around with it, and I think had like that little reference because obviously they wanted to get
instead of just like a straight insert of the movie characters.
Yeah. But yeah, Joe Schreiber, his Star Wars bibliography in Legends, I don't know if he's written anything for the new canon, but in the Legends in the EU, he has 3 books. Death Troopers, obviously, Red Harvest, obviously, and then Maul Lockdown. Yeah, Death Troopers is his best book by far.
He wrote like Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader, or was that someone else?
No, that was definitely not Joe Schreiber.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Joe, Death Troopers certainly the best. Yeah. Yeah,
no, definitely especially out of the 2 we read. But as a kind of a duology, like I had mentioned earlier, they don't really connect. The only connection is zombies. So, and then we kind of get the reference and everything between both of them that there's zombies and they're spooky. I think the zombies were a lot creepier and a lot more menacing in Death Troopers. Maybe it's just because of like the claustrophobic setting.
Same zombies, but much creepier because they're not standard zombies. They have like black goo coming out of them, and they do this like screaming thing where they harmonize while screaming, and it's how they communicate because they're like a hive mind sort of thing, which it just uses all that a lot better. It just has tighter, better zombie logic than Red Harvest.
Yeah,
which kind of just forgets about the zombies and we'll just leave them all on the snow planet. Like I don't know. They all have lightsabers, but then I don't know.
Yeah. Death Troopers definitely.
I would say Death Troopers definitely worth a read, and if you like it, you'll probably kind of enjoy Red Harvest at least.
Yeah, but definitely if you have not read it. Definitely go out and give Death Troopers a read. But yeah, unless you have anything else to add.
Nope, that's the whole shebang.
All right, so then from the Lore Council, this is Cade signing off.
This is Keith. I will see y'all later.